Mark?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Can you talk here?
Sure. What would you like me to say? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Can I see a little?
It's on.
Yeah, no, I just want to see the number. Look at that. Right.
Hi. We have a talking water here. So did we have the pamphlets? Oh, we're passing them out? Yeah, because I think we'll do it in English. Yeah. So, hi everybody, my name's Jason. There's a few faces I don't know. I'd love to get names. Joey I just met, and Sophia? Sophia? Noel? Nolan. Great name. Stella. Did I get an email from you? No. Okay.
Peter.
Kip? Kip. All right.
Tiffany.
Marlena, Tiffany, Amelia, Brian. Okay. Say hi to everybody who's online. I think Vivian is online, and I'm not sure who else. So hi to everybody online. So we're going to, does everybody know these prayers? Has anybody here never done these prayers? Okay, so you don't know the significance of them or anything? This is a prayer we've been doing here ever since I've been around, which is a while now, since this place opened. And we've always done them in Tibetan, and there's one line that's actually Sanskrit, but I'd like to do these in English. Basically, what we're doing is we're sort of setting our minds, and we are dedicating what we're doing tonight for the good of our understanding and for everyone else's, and so that we may be able to help that. So we sort of set what you might call a mandala, a kind of, a beautiful place in our minds, and we sort of prepare ourselves to receive teachings. And then at the end of the class, we'll do it again and we'll give it away, give everything away, all right? Which is kind of how this thing works, all right? If you want to keep it, give it away. So, Tiffany, would you like to lead us? You know it in English?
Yeah, I was going to struggle with the first
Or you want a cheat sheet?
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
I'm so used to the Tibetan, I don't really remember it in English.
I remember it.
Okay. Everybody who knows it knows how to do this. If you don't, just don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Okay?
Here is the great
Filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers, the great mountain, the 4 continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer them all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Kam niryatayami. Okay, that's the Sanskrit part.
I go for refuge.
The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being.
I go for refuge.
To the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. Power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I achieve Buddhahood for the sake of every living being.
I go for refuge.
to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until I achieve enlightenment by the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest. May I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Thank you. Okay, so who here is new to Mahasukha and has never taken one of these in-depth courses before? Sophia, anybody else?
I've only taken one.
Which one did you take?
The last one with Laura.
Okay. The last one was the middle way course, course 2, is that right? Okay, so this is a little bit different. We actually have, man, that light is really bugging me. Yeah, can you turn it a little bit away from me? No, like, yeah, that's better. Thank you. I think it's because I wear glasses. So, no, it's really that one, because I can, maybe you're right. Maybe I'll sit back a little bit and see if that helps. Or I'll do that. We really are having two parallel courses going on. The middle way courses are actually being designed and written as we speak. There are 7 courses that are offered right now. There's going to be eventually around 30. And they're being written by Lama Samadhi Marut, who is the spiritual director of this center. The course we're taking tonight, it's interesting that you're coming at this for this particular course, is actually the last of the 15 courses that are called, we call them the in-depth courses. They used to be called the ACI courses because the Asian Classics Institute was the organization that we were part of, and we changed our name. We were actually always Mahasukha Center, but we were part of this other organization, which we're not really anymore. But the core classes that they gave us, we continue to teach. And these courses, the difference, Nolan, between that course and these, is these courses were really designed around a monastic experience. They were designed by Geshe Michael Roach, who is the teacher of Lama Marut, and Geshe Michael was trained in a monastery and became Geshe, which is like a PhD, over about 20 years. And he took those courses that he studied, and he consolidated them and reduced them into these core courses. Actually, there are 30 of them. 15 of them we call open, and 15 of them we call the higher teachings. You have to be invited in to those other 15 when you're ready. And so there's actually 18 courses, but the last 3 are review. So I'm talking about 15 original courses. And usually at the end of these, for people who have taken all of them, and Peter, have you taken all of them up to now? Yeah, except what, the 14, we're doing it out of order?
Yeah, we skipped 8 and 9, and then we're jumping back to 14.
Yeah, we switched 15 and 14 really for scheduling purposes. Who was available when to teach it. Hi, what's your name?
Angela.
Angela, hi Angela, I'm Jason. There are a few other students who have taken all of these courses up to now, or virtually all of them, and then they will graduate. This was actually designed as a teacher training series of courses originally. So traditionally these courses have gone a lot more in depth into the philosophy and of Buddhism and of the particular lineage of the Dalai Lama. And they still do. And we will continue to offer these courses, particularly for people who are interested in really kind of jumping into a deeper end of the pool, so to speak. But at the same time, I've always tried in the courses, we all do, all the teachers here, to bring a little of ourselves to it, so it's not like we're just learning something out of a book, okay? Up here is, if you, traditionally, this course includes homework, quizzes, a final exam. There's readings for every class. I will leave it up to you individually to decide whether you want to do that. I can tell you that it's a lot easier to understand if you're anything like me, actually writing them out or typing them out, whatever your process is a lot easier for me to remember and understand what I'm talking about. If I just listen and then leave, it tends to go in one ear and out the other. So it's up to you how much. I'm not requiring that people here do this, but for Peter and a few other people like Peter, they will be doing all that coursework. So there's also reading that you can get, which we will be quoting from, and this is where you find it online. So you go to mahasukha.org and you click on the resources link and then the courses link, and then you go scroll down the list of courses to course 15, which is what the Buddha really meant. Okay? So there's some announcements that I wanted to mention quickly now, and we'll repeat them again at the end of class. Just I want to make sure we don't forget. There's Thursday nights starting on May 29th and going through July 3rd. There's going to be a series of meditation classes where you're just learning meditations. And actually there's 2 different meditations being offered. The first one, I love this title, it's called Your Mind, a User's Guide, or Your Mind for Dummies, I suppose is another way to think of it. And it's shamatha meditation, which is really sort of learning to simply be present in your meditation, which of course is a foundation for everything that we do. And the other one is called Breath of Compassion, and that's a Lojong meditation, L-O-J-O-N-G, if you don't know the word, which is really a large part of that is learning how to exchange yourself and others, learning to get out of yourself. And part of that is, for instance, what they call Tonglen, which is breathing in sort of the darkness and breathing out light. It's a more of an analytical meditation as opposed to the shamatha. But anyway, they're going to be teaching both of those, and we'll announce this again at the end of the class. What was the other thing I had to mention? That was it. Okay. I also rather blatantly put the donation bowl out in the doorway. So when you leave, you will likely bump into it. We will also bring this up at the end of class. We don't charge for these classes, but this place costs money. So we need to keep the lights on, the doors open. So we ask that you make a donation for these classes. Okay. So, how do you like the new setup here? A little more cash. We used to do this a lot more formally. I'm going to sort of alternate my position. Ow. Okay. I wanted to, Kip, every time I look at you, I see a light. Is there a way for you guys to move over slightly? Yeah, there you go. Oh, no, now you're all lit up, man.
I've been meditating.
I can see that. I can see that. I am perceiving your light. Yeah, it's great. Okay. So I just want to say in advance that this course sort of presumes that you understand a lot of this stuff already, since it's the 15th of 15 courses. If you don't, fine. Ask me. You can also ask the people around you who have been to these, but definitely ask me, which means in the middle of class. Raise your hand, say, what are you talking about? Because one of the things that we have learned that we need to do is constantly review things over and over and go back to basics. This is not easy stuff to really understand. We're talking about what this course is about, what the Buddha really meant. What did he mean by what? What did he mean by what? Good morning? What did he mean by, I think I'll have rice today instead of soup? What did the Buddha really mean? What was he talking about? He's talking about the nature of reality. And this kind of class, it's easy to get really intellectual about it. It can really kind of get into philosophical nitpicking. Well, this ancient Indian school said it was this, but that ancient Indian school said it was that, and which do you think, and you know, and who's wrong and who's right, and it's very easy to keep it all up in here and not think about what the implications are. And I really sort of wanted to start this course by talking a little about myself in the sense of how much my practice has changed in the last couple of years, certainly in the last year, certainly in the last 6 months, certainly in the last 6 weeks since I got married. And how do I describe that? I've been doing this now for, what, 6, 7 years, and I know what it is to keep it all in my head, and I also know what it is to sort of tentatively bring it out of the room and off the cushion and into my life and see if I can apply these things to the daily things in my life, my relationships at work, my relationships within my family. But as most of you, or many of you, I'm sure know or have known in your lives, when you get involved in an intimate, loving relationship, whether it's a lover, whether it's a husband, a wife, or even within your family, it's like all bets are off. That's really when the tests come, because you are so vulnerable. And I certainly have learned over these last years how closed off I was, how many walls I still had up. And I had gone through, in my 20s, 10 years of depression, 10 years of practically being a shut-in in my apartment and being afraid to go out and not even really understanding how, this always sounds silly to say, I didn't know how to live. And I didn't understand how everybody else did. I didn't understand how everybody else seemed to have a normal life. They got up, they had a job, they had girlfriends, boyfriends, they had a family. This seemed so far out of my reality. I just didn't know how to function. I was frightened all the time. And I was dark all the time. And everything came out of that. And I struggled to pull myself out of that. And I did. I thought I did, to a certain extent. I managed to get up to a certain level, and I had a family. My daughter is here, and one of two. And I did bring things up to a certain level, but I did not understand how walled off I still was, how angry I still was, how frightened I still was, because that anger didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of that fear. And when I stepped onto this road, I began a process that has taken me to places I didn't know I could ever get to. And this has really come home mostly in the last year or so. And let me put it to you this way. There's a spiritual practice has a formal side. You get up in the morning and you sit on your cushion and you have prayers like we just read, and you have mantras perhaps you recite, and you have meditations that you've learned, and you do readings, and you go to classes, and you're trying to absorb all this stuff, and you wear mala beads, and you go on retreats, and you have a certain sort of form that it takes. And then you get real busy. Your job gets busier and your life gets crazier, and you start to think, well, I'm losing my practice. Something's wrong. I don't have time anymore to hang out at the center and do this and do that, and I'm losing my practice. But when, at least for me, in my experience, when I find myself in this relationship with someone never having been as open, never having felt as safe, never having allowed someone else to feel as safe. At a certain point, you begin to realize that that is your practice. That your practice is what you do from the second you open your eyes in the morning until you shut them at night, and in fact, probably in the time in between. And it doesn't have the same form anymore, and it takes a while to kind of figure out that this is what you've been working towards. That your practice changes, but it doesn't go away. Why am I talking about this? Because this course in particular, I found when I took it, and I remember when I took it, it was all up here. I memorized everything. When I did my graduation thing, I passed it 100%. I had memorized every single thing. I had tons of questions thrown at me. I knew every answer. 3 weeks later, I couldn't remember a damn thing. Not a damn thing. I still have the cheat sheet at home that in case anybody should ask me, what is that from course 14? What was that thing? I can look, right? It took years for me to understand that that stuff was seeping into my very breath, and that I was beginning to actually act out this practice in a very different way. So, hello. You talking to me? You talking to me? He's next door.
Jason, I'm just going to close it.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. So what I want to... I'll wait for Peter to finish. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. So what I'm saying is, I can tell you from firsthand experience that what we're going to be learning in this course has incredible implications in your daily life. It's in your daily life. It can unite every aspect of your life with every aspect of your practice. If you let it seep out of your head, take it with you. All right? Tantra, which is another name for what the higher teachings are called, calls it the union of the two. The union of the two. The union of bliss and voidness. The union of merit and wisdom. The union of deceptive and ultimate reality. And what we're going to be studying here is where that came from. This is the course of events among ancient Indian scholars that led us to the very ideas that allow us to take what we learn here off the cushion, out of the classroom, and transform ourselves, quite literally. And I tell you this from experience. After all, there's nothing I can teach you. All I can do is share with you my own experience. It's up to you whether you get something from that, whether you absorb anything that's useful to you. Hopefully it will be. All I can do is tell you what I've been through and why it's important. So, what the Buddha really meant. This is a course on emptiness. This is for all of you Buddha heads out there, like Tiffany and Peter, etc., who have been taking a lot of these courses, Laurie, right, that have understood a certain way of what this means, what emptiness means. Up to now, up to this course, we've been studying emptiness through the eyes of this ancient Buddhist school called Madhyamika, the middle way between extremes. Right? Between nihilism on the one hand and absolutism on the other, between nothing exists, everything is just a dream, and everything exists exactly the way you see it, nothing more, nothing less. You know, he who dies with the most toys wins, all that kind of idea. Did I say something funny? Now, for those of you who've been studying this, we're going to turn everything completely upside down. So for those of you who are starting here, this part's easy. For those of you who've been studying up to now, you got to take off the hat you've been wearing for all these courses and put on another one. All right? And that's not simple, because I'm going to ask questions and you're going to come up with answers that you've been learning, and they're going to be wrong because you're wearing the wrong hat. You got to look at things a little bit differently. This is one of the ways that the Buddha taught. He would teach one way to an audience, and then just when they got comfortable with it, he'd pull the rug out and turn everything upside down and shake everything up. And we're actually going to focus in on 3 particular teachings that he gave that did exactly that, okay? I wanted to start with an exercise. And this is to emphasize that this is not book learning. I want to give us at least a taste of what it might be like to take this out of this room and into your life. So we're going to do this exercise. I don't know who of you here were here when Kimberly Teresa was teaching on a Friday night a few weeks ago. Remarkable teaching, quite beautiful. And I was fortunate enough to actually get out of work and get here. And this is something she did, and it really struck me. I thought it'd be very useful. So we're going to call it, Who Are You? What we're going to do is divide up into pairs, ideally with somebody you don't know. It's only going to take about 5 minutes. I only want to give you about 5 minutes because we have a lot of things to talk about. You're going to sit together, looking into each other's eyes, and take, what's the matter, Tiff?
Tremors.
Tremors? Do you want to stand up and stretch it out? Yeah. That's what comes from 3 kids and 12 jobs. I want you'll be looking into each other's eyes. You need to try and let go of any preconceived ideas of who this person is or might be sitting across from you. That's why I'd rather you do it with someone you don't know. And one of you decide who goes first, will ask a simple question. Who are you? When I say so, you will start. Who are you? And the other person will answer. Try and keep the answers short and sweet, like, who are you? Jason. Who are you? A man. Who are you? In this room. Who are you? A teacher. Who are you? A student. That's sort of an answer, right? Just try not to think too much when you're asked this, when you are being asked this question. See what comes out. Just see what comes out. And for the person asking, if you really sort of stay open, you may discover that this person who you thought you knew or thought you had made assumptions about, that you might be very surprised. And for the person answering, you could be very surprised at how you label yourself. So I just want to try this for a few minutes. So let's pair up in twos. If anybody is odd person out, I'll take them. Mark, can you do this, or do you have to sit back there? So Mark's going to join. So do we have even numbers or odds? Sophia, you're alone? Mark, could you do it with Sophia? Okay, so sit on the same level if you can. Yeah. I'll tell you. No, it's going to be one and then the other. All right? So everybody quiet down, please. Everybody quiet down. All right? Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Just take a deep breath. Try and let go Just be here without any preconceived ideas. When you open your eyes, I want you to be looking at the other, at their eyes. Now. Hopefully you have picked who's going to go first. I'm going to time you for about 3 minutes. So one goes, and then I'll tell you to stop, and then we'll change to the other. Now. "15 seconds. Okay, let's finish up whatever you were just saying, and let's switch. Now the other person asks. I'd rather you do it just one person at a time, because then don't do it as a conversation, folks. Okay? The idea is to, one person asks, the other person answers. Okay? So, let's start again, now. 15 more seconds. Okay, you wrap it up. Okay. Let's come back to where we were sitting. So, Kip, you're shining again.
I'm in a flow state right
I'm enjoying it, but you know. Hey. Anybody find anything interesting happen? Either in answering or in asking? Or in listening, I should say.
I noticed in answering, I kept repeating things that were important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Those things sort of surprised me.
That were important to you when you were answering? You kept repeating them. I'm repeating what you said so to make sure people online can hear what you said. Anybody else? Peter?
I just noticed that so many of the answers surround activity,
What you do. That's how you define yourself.
what you have to say about yourself.
Right. I am a contractor, I am a sailor, whatever. Yeah. Lori?
I was identifying who I want to be as who I am now or who I'm trying to be.
So aspirational more. Yeah.
I noticed not things that I said, but things that first came to mind that I was about to say were things that I really didn't think that I was. It's just, is that weird?
Or perhaps they're, what Lori was saying, they're things you hope to be, and you haven't yet, in your own mind, found them. Debbie?
I didn't mention what I did for a living. It didn't even come up.
Interesting.
I said I'm retiring next week, but I didn't say my profession.
So you're already retired in your own mind. The hell with it, I'm gone. Tiffany?
I noticed that they were all just like labels of myself, right?
Well, they all are, aren't they?
Mother, wife,
Right.
daughter. And then they were all verbs as well.
Right,
I'm a gardener, I'm a photographer, I'm a,
right.
but they all had a quality as well. There's a quality associated, like I'm a, faithful this or whatnot.
Faithful mother, talented photographer, whatever the
Yeah,
case may be.
But in my mind, it was
Yeah.
like I wanted to give more description
Right.
around it, but it was always the verb,
Right.
maybe lack of description.
I think an exercise like this actually touches on so many different layers of what we're going to be dealing with in this course. One of them, obviously, is labels. What we label ourselves and what we label other people. And if we really open up and listen to what people are saying, we can often be very surprised, if somebody says frightened, for instance, and you're thinking, God, this person really intimidates me. They're obviously so much smarter than I am, and now I have to be paired up with them, for God's sakes. I'm going to make a fool of myself. And out of their mouths comes frightened. And you think, what? I didn't know you were. And you can begin to realize that we're all going through these things, and we all have these different aspects. So there's two things right there. One of them are labels, and that's going to become very important in this course. And the other is being open, because you have your own labels, which is if you're feeling intimidated, which is I feel inferior. That's my label right now. All right? I'm looking at this person and I'm feeling inferior. So I now have my inferior hat on. There's another level, which is we're going to get into, which is really the meaning of this, the raison d'etre of this course, which is, are you being literal? Are you being figurative? Or I could also say metaphorical. So for instance, if you say frightened, let's just use that word. Are you saying you're frightened right this moment? Or are you saying there are times when that is part of who I am? There are times I'm brave. There are times I feel fearless. There are other times I want to crawl in a hole and die because, I think the world is going to stomp all over me. So are you being literal, meaning right now, I am frightened at this moment, or am I being figurative or metaphorical? What the Buddha really meant is asking the question, when was the Buddha being literal? When was the Buddha being figurative? And how do we know the difference? How do we figure that out? Because there were times when the Buddha seemed to completely contradict himself. The interesting thing in this course, and the reason I wanted to start with this exercise as well, is we all do that. God knows, my now being in this new marriage, how many times it amazes me, how many times what I think I'm saying is not what somebody else is hearing. And often is not actually what's coming out of my mouth, though I'm convinced it is. Or I'm convinced I said something that I never verbalized, but I thought it. So, we are doing this all the time. How do we figure this out? I mean, nobody can hand us a manual and say, here's when it's literal, here's when it's figurative, obviously. So, a huge amount of this course is about learning how to think, learning how to use your own logic, learning how to use your own experience, learning how to use the words of people who you trust, who maybe can inform you about something you aren't quite sure of yet. But in particular, this is about learning when the Buddha, who taught how long ago? Everybody? Anybody who knows? Buddha heads in the room? 2,500 years ago, right? 500 BC, 600 BC, somewhere in that range, right? What he was really saying. So, kind of forces you to look beyond the words into a deeper meaning. And Buddhism, in fact, I would say any great spiritual tradition, particularly in what we might label the mystical traditions, whether it's Christian mysticism, Judaic mysticism, Buddhist mysticism, Hindu mysticism, Muslim mysticism, the Sufis, are taking you beyond the words, beyond the ritual, into a deeper meaning. And people who step onto those paths are willing to jump off a cliff because they don't know what's into the darkness. You don't know what's out there. If you're afraid to jump off the cliff, then you wait for the priest to tell you, or the rabbi to tell you, or the imam to tell you what the rules are, and then you follow those rules. But if you've come to this room, you probably already understand that Buddhism doesn't offer you that comfort. It demands that you think. It demands that you work at it. It demands that you think for yourself, which I personally find tremendously exciting and was one of the reasons why I stepped onto this road. For those of you who haven't heard this story, I went on retreat in 2008 in the middle of my entire world coming apart. And I was hurting pretty badly, and I was pretty damn angry, and I was really cynical, and I didn't even know why I had flown 3,000 miles in the rain to Massachusetts to be in this dumb retreat that I had been invited to, except that I couldn't think of anything else that was going to work. Everything that I could think of hadn't worked up to that point. So this was like, okay, I'm going to jump off a cliff and do something really insane. I ended up losing my job because of it. It was crazy for me to do this. And one of the first things I heard on that retreat from Lama Marut, the same person who founded this center and 7 other centers, was the first thing that registered in my mind. This guy comes out and he's in monk's robes, but he talks like, what, like a surfer, right? Surfer dude. And one of the first things that really registered is when he said, the teacher has no power. The student has all the power. And I've been around the block a few times. I went through the 60s. I went through all of the politicians and the revolutionary leaders and the spiritual leaders who said, follow me, I have the answer. Just do what I tell you. Just follow what I say. And I saw that all around me, all through the 60s. And I came out not trusting any of it, not trusting anybody. And I certainly never trusted the spiritual path. Well, a dumb thing to say. I wasn't raised in a spiritual path. I was raised in a religion. in an organized religion and found no spirituality in it at all. So I didn't trust that either. And I went on this retreat absolutely ready to bolt at any moment. The second anybody said, here, do it this way. Here, listen to me, follow me. Instead, this dude gets up there and says, literally a dude, right? And says, I don't have any power. You've got all the power, you know? You can ignore every word I say. And I could feel my shoulders relax. Nobody was trying to push me into a corner or force me into anything. And I opened up. Anyway, let's get to the course, the class here. Enough about me. So, this chair allows me to stand up and write. Before, I was never able to do that. Okay, where do I want to start? Okay, oops. Hello. Put this on my belt. Mark, is this all right? Okay. Mind only. We are going to be looking at one of the ancient Indian Buddhist schools called mind only. What do you think that means? I actually want some answers. This is not a rhetorical question. I'm not going to sit here and then give you the answer. What do you think it means? Mind only. The mind only school. Nolan.
Is it concerned only with thinking?
Concerned only with thinking? Okay. I'm not going to tell you yet. I just really want to hear what comes to mind. My handwriting is getting... Is it? Thank you. Thank you for getting me off the hook. But my handwriting has always been really, really bad.
Logistics,
Yeah.
logic.
Logic. Okay? Let me give you a little more information. Maybe I'll get a slightly different answer. This is one of the schools that was defining, or attempting to define, the nature of reality. What actually causes your world to exist? And they're called mind only.
Sense input. Input from the senses.
Input from your senses. To what? Your mind?
Yes, you see something, you see it.
Okay. Do you think it perception? Okay. Generally, the common answer is everything exists in your mind.
Maybe also like tricks of the mind.
Tricks of the mind? Okay. I'm going to write above it now. Tricks of the mind. That's actually getting kind of... There are a few things here. Actually, all of them.
When you say everything exists in the mind, are you also...
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that's a common thing people say.
Are you also, when you say that, is it nihilistic when you say that too?
Well, it certainly sounds that way, doesn't it? Certainly sounds like that. Everything out here is an illusion. It's all imaginary, right? Doesn't it sound like that? All right? There's also a solipsism. Anybody know what solipsism is? Solipsism is a philosophical idea that the only thing that can be proven to exist is self. So everything else, you cannot prove it exists. I don't know that school, but I'm just trying to show you how smart I am, that I actually did some homework. But nihilism, yes, that's certainly something that... actually, nihilism is an accusation not thrown so much at the mind-only school, but at the middle way school, which is the one that is the center of our teachings, also known as Madhyamika, nihilist, because the middle way will say that, okay, we'll go back to one of our classic examples. What am I holding? A pen, okay? You're sure this is a pen? Is this a pen and will always be a pen and is a pen to anybody who sees it? All right? If a dog walks in this room, this is for the people who've never seen this before, all right? If a dog comes in the room and I'm sitting here waving this thing around, what's it probably going to do? It's going to write with it? Sophia? Bite it, chew it, right? It looks like a stick. Something to chew on, something to play with, all right? So who's right? Is the dog right or are you right that it's a pen? What is it? Both are right, or none are right, okay? And here's the third part of the question. I put this down. Everybody leaves the room. All the dogs leave the room. What is it now? It's potential. It's potentially a stick. It's potentially a pen. Probably potentially other things, depending on who happens to see it. And if they've never seen anything like this before, I can dig a hole with it. So it can be a tool that way, right? It's potential. So what's my point? I forgot what my point is. Tiffany, what was my point?
Nihilism?
Nihilism, thank you very much. Right. So the middle way school says, in essence, this pen doesn't exist. Now that's actually only part of the sentence, but you'll see it said that way and written that way a lot. This pen doesn't exist. There's a very famous sutra from the Buddha, which I will mention again later in the class, called the Heart Sutra. In fact, I happen to have it here. Well, there's no point. Where the Buddha will literally say, there is no nose, there are no eyes, there are no ears, there is no tongue, there is no hand, etc. Nothing stops, nothing starts. There's nothing to reach, there's nothing not to reach. Basically saying nothing exists. Certainly sounds that way, right? No eyes, no hands, no arms, no nose, no nothing. So it sounds nihilistic. Everything out there is an illusion. And if you only look that deep, then you're probably correct. But those of you who have studied middle way, Madhyamika, know that you actually can go a layer deeper. If you fill out the sentence, what it's saying is this doesn't exist the way you think it exists. It exists perfectly fine. I can write with it, a dog can chew it, I can dig a hole with it, small hole. It works, functions. But it doesn't exist the way you think it exists. Out here, as a pen, all the time, when everybody leaves the room, it's still a pen sitting here. It doesn't become what it is until we label it. That's like saying, I'm not frightened until I tell myself I'm frightened. I'm not ugly until I think of myself as ugly. Same idea, right? Okay. So nihilism actually is more thrown at the middle way school, not at the mind-only school. But the common idea for mind-only, and we're going to get back to all these at the end of tonight, is that mind-only means it's all in the brain. Mind is everything. In fact, when I first learned this, the answer to the question of what does mind-only mean actually said it is mainly the mind. And even then, I didn't really understand what that meant, because it still sounded like, and this is something that I've been trying to grasp ever since I started studying this stuff. What does that mean? Does that mean that this pillow wasn't even there and I'm like literally creating it in my mind? The feathers and the beads that are inside and the cloth isn't there. It's all like, you know, how does the car move from me? I can remember wrestling with this question. Well, how does the car move? Is it an illusion that it's moving? Am I making the car move? It doesn't really make any sense to me when I think of it that way. What is this, like the power of my mind, like telekinesis? I can move cars? It certainly sounds that way when you begin to think about it. It doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't mean that. And mind only doesn't mean it's all in the mind. You've begun to get closer with things like tricks of the mind and perception. And input, yes, but where does that input come from? Is it input or is it output? That's an interesting question there. Is input actually output? That is a question that mind only will ask. Is it coming in or is it going out? Is the perception coming in or is the perception going out from your mind? We will use logic to try and understand this for ourselves, so that when we try and figure out what figurative and literal are, we don't just learn an answer or wait for somebody, as I said, to hand us the manual. We have to reason it out. Okay. So this course will ask, is the Buddha being figurative or literal? For instance, the Buddha at one point said, kill your mother and father. Literally. He said that. Literally. Kill your mother and father. All right? Do you think the Buddha meant that literally? Anybody? No. So Mark, do you know what the circumstances were when he said that?
I think it had to do with when someone was on the path and they needed to leave the home to go reach truth and find enlightenment, that if they needed to leave their parents, that they were willing to kill off their mother and father to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a figurative statement. It wasn't like, go kill your parents. It was, if you need to leave home in order to step onto this path, then do so. And then you can, hopefully you can go back. Once you have achieved the strength and courage to be on this path, then you can reestablish yourself. So he was being figurative, right? He wasn't being literal. And the same thing with the example I gave you with the Heart Sutra. You know, is the Buddha literally saying you have no nose? He's saying you don't have a nose the way you think you have a nose. Your nose doesn't exist the way you think it does. Right? It's like, does the path have a goal? Well, on one level you can think of it that way because it's easier to kind of picture yourself walking down this road towards something you want to achieve. But as you get into a more nuanced understanding of it, you realize there's nowhere to go. And the path leads nowhere but right here. So you could say that the phrase, you know, achieving a goal on this path is also being figurative. It's not being literal. But figurative is used to teach. We need to use language. What we're trying to achieve, ultimately, this idea of waking up, and I actually prefer the term waking up to enlightenment, because I don't know what that means, and it sounds so unattainable. Waking up, that I can handle, right? Waking up to how things work. Waking up to what's actually going on. Waking up to what's going on when I'm arguing with my wife and I begin to realize, wait a minute, I know this person. I know this person. I love this person. This person is not attacking me. I am feeling attacked. Where's that feeling coming from? Man, does that change things fast? Like that. Well, I should only be so lucky it changed it like that. I have to cool down first. But it does change things. This is partly what I mean about taking this practice out of the classroom and off the cushion and into your life. When you're in the middle of the crap and you're heated up, and if you can realize in that worst time, that when that emotion has grabbed you, wait a minute, hold it, slow down, look who you're talking to. This is not your enemy. This is not your mother or whoever it is that scared the hell out of you. This is Lynn in my case, or Brian, or Amelia, or Tiffany, or whoever. This is somebody who I love, somebody who I trust. So what the hell am I so frightened of? It's not coming from them. It's coming from me. Okay. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep mentioning personal stuff because I need to keep this out of the intellect and into our guts and combine our minds and hearts here, okay? It's really important to keep doing that. So there are 3 levels we talk about of when things can be figurative and literal, and those of you doing homework, this is a homework question. Okay, I'm going to erase this, but we'll all remember this, okay? I'm assuming you've all memorized it. I know I have. Okay, so there's 3 levels of expression. Oh, man, this is not working for me. The first one is the level of expression. The second one is level of reality. There are some words I can get away with, and there are some I can't. And the third is on the level of understanding.
What was the top one?
I'm gonna repeat it. Everybody doing homework can read my writing, gets bonus points. Okay. The first one is level of expression. Level of expression. It's our words, the way we express ourselves. Don't laugh at me. Okay, the way we express ourselves. Like saying, kill your mother and father. But you don't actually mean that. You're speaking metaphorically, right? It's the same sort of thing you might have heard one or the other say in this little exercise that we did, right? So it's on the level of our words. Do they match? Is what I'm saying and what I mean, do they match up? Kill your mother and father and what I mean when I say that do not match up. So you could say they're figurative, right? So this is where I'm going to mention the 3 turnings of the wheel. And this is actually the center of this course. This is the reason this course exists. Actually, you know what? I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to explain these 3 first, but let me write this down. The 3 turnings of the wheel. Okay. So the first level is level of expression, so it's our words. The second level, level of reality, and the difference between reality and understanding here is kind of nuanced. And this is where you really need to make sure you have your mind-only hat on. Because I know especially you, Peter, you're going to jump all over this. All right? Okay, so the level of reality is an object's appearance versus the way it really is. Is there a match? Is it literal or figurative? Like, for instance, there's a classic example of a rope and a snake. When you see a rope and it's curled up and it's the kind of rope that has 2 colors, strands that are mixed, a lighter one and a darker one, and it's in a corner in the shadows and you think it's a snake. So you jump, and then it turns out to be a rope. So there is something out there that is deceiving you. Could be somebody in disguise. That's another example, right? So it's on the level of reality. Something that is out there that is not what it seems to be would be on the level of figurative. Something that's out there that is what it seems to be. You perceive a rope, it is a rope. You perceive a snake, it is a snake, would be literal. Pretty simple, right? Yeah.
I have a question about the first one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Doesn't it extend beyond words, like your actions and, I mean,
Yeah, I said words and expression. So yes, beyond words. But I'm talking about a general idea that one level is how we express ourselves, whether that's words or whether that's actually a very good example of what you just brought up. Does my action match my intent? Sometimes people will make a joke, for instance, and they'll pretend to want to be about to assault you or hit you just because they think it's funny. Is their intent to actually hurt you, or are they trying to, do something else? Maybe that's a poor example, but I think that's what you mean. It's your actions match. But that I would call on the level of expression. So the second one then is a level of reality. Okay? You could sort of say, is something lying to you? Is something out there lying to you? Okay? And then the third one is on the level of understanding. This has to do with perception. So this is more of how you see something as opposed to the object is not what you think it is. This is what I meant about this being kind of nuanced. So the second one, level of reality, you could say is that phrase, is the object lying to you, actually works for me. And this is definitely not the higher teachings that we have learned. This is different, but this is where you can differentiate between these two things. One is coming from the outside in. The level of understanding is going from the inside out. How am I perceiving it? How am I perceiving it? It refers to two states of mind. Okay? So the first state of mind is called pramana, which is a Sanskrit word, meaning valid perception. I'll write it here. Are you having a valid or accurate perception? This presumes that you're not stoned or drunk or crazy, that you're not under the influence of anything like that, and you have a perception that that rope is a snake. That's a valid perception because in that moment, that's what you believe it is. So that's a pramana. We actually have these most of the time. You look at your hand, you've got a normal hand, you see 5 fingers, that's a pramana. You're having a valid perception of a hand, okay? So you can have, and that would be literal, that I'm seeing these 5 fingers, that's literal. You can also have an approximate understanding. Like, for instance, motion can play tricks on you. Have you ever been sitting on a train that's in a station and there's a train next to you that's in the station and that train starts moving and you think you are? Has that happened to anybody? That's a good example, I think, of what I'm talking about. It's an approximate understanding because something's moving, but you got the wrong thing moving, okay? So that would be more figurative. It's not literal. It's not a completely accurate perception. So those are the 3 levels of understanding. And we're going to pretty much in this course focus on the first, levels of expression, okay? Words and expression. Now let me go back to this idea of the 3 turnings of the wheel. Does anybody here know what that refers to? Anybody? The Dharma, yes, but anything in particular? Mark?
3 turns of the wheel was 3 moments of time that the Buddha taught.
Okay, anybody else can fill in, pick up from what Mark started?
Is it like how like the 3 jewels, like the 3 things, like the Dharma was sung by the last order?
The Buddha?
Buddha, okay, so it's the first one.
Yeah.
But it's like that cycle?
No.
No.
Okay. Tiffany?
The first time he taught, he said nothing exists. Second time he taught, he said that everything exists. Or I might have the 2 book down. And then the last time It's kind of like it's a combination of both.
Okay, so we kind of got the answer, or a good part of it, out of all of those. It refers to three teachings of the Buddha. The first one actually was everything exists pretty much the way you see it. All right. The second one, he took a complete 180 and said nothing exists. The Heart Sutra being a good example of that. Absolutely no nose, no eyes, no lips, no ears. Right. Nothing starts, nothing stops. Took a complete 180. And the third one, you're saying, well, some things exist, some things don't. Some things exist the way you think, some things don't, okay? Let me refine that a little bit. It doesn't actually refer to three specific teachings, even though when we have, those of you who have read this history, it does identify particular sermons that the Buddha gave, particular teachings in a particular place at a particular time. But in fact, it really is more useful and probably more accurate to say that it's three different ways that the Buddha taught about the true nature of reality, or emptiness, as we call it, okay? So he could have taught it at the end of his career as a teacher or at the beginning. If he was saying everything exists the way you see it, it's called the first turning of the wheel. If he's saying nothing exists and he taught it in 1 year and then taught it again 30 years later, that doesn't matter. They're both called the second turning of the wheel. Do you understand my point? So the label has to do with what he was teaching more than the particular historical period. But it does delineate these three ways that the Buddha taught depending on who he was speaking to. And so in the third one, when he said some things exist, some things don't, he was completely contradicting the first two. So everything seems to contradict everything else. The second one contradicted the first, the third one contradicted both of the prior ones. So our job in this course is going to be to try and figure out what he really meant. Okay? So you could say two of those teachings were figurative and one was literal. Okay. Let me keep going. I know I'm running late. But we're having fun. Okay. So the third turning of the wheel begins with this bodhisattva's question. The bodhisattva being sort of a spiritual warrior. And it's called the bodhisattva's question. There's actually a chapter in a book, and I'll give you the actual readings so you'll see it in your readings, but I'll give you the names. The 7th chapter of this book starts with this bodhisattva's question, which is basically, what the hell did you mean? You said one thing here, you said another thing there. What's going on? I mean, I think he was probably a lot more polite than I'm being right now, but I'm just saying this is essentially what he said. We know you're the Buddha. We know that you're not just playing tricks, and we know you're not dummy. But what did you mean? We don't understand. How could you say these two different things? And the Buddha's response is within a sutra called the Sutra on the True Intent. The Sutra on the True Intent. If I get up and write everything down, we'll never get out of here. All right? The Sutra on the True Intent. This sutra, who wrote the Sutra on the True Intent? Come on. Who wrote the Sutra on the True Intent? What? The Buddha. Okay? When we call something a sutra, it is from the Buddha. Right? It is not a commentary on something he said. It's what he taught this. He wrote this. Somebody wrote it down, or they passed it on orally and eventually it was written down. But a sutra is attributed to the Buddha. So this is called the Sutra on the True Intent, and essentially it's actually the Buddha's own commentary on what he meant. This Sutra on the True Intent, and particularly the chapter called The Bodhisattva's Question, is the source for the mind-only school. Okay? Why are we talking about the mind-only school? There were 4 great schools in ancient Indian Buddhism. And don't confuse these, if you've learned this already, with the 4 Tibetan traditions, the 4 Tibetan lineages, the Gelugpa, the Nyingma, the Sakya, and the Kagyu. The Dalai Lama being a member of the Gelugpa lineage. You know, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who founded Shambhala, he's Kagyu. So it's not the same thing, right? Buddhism came to Tibet like 1000 AD, somewhere in there. So we're going back a long time before that. Okay? So these are the 4 ancient schools in India. And the highest one is called Middle Way, or Madhyamika. Can I erase this? Somebody who can write better and faster than me? Okay. Just, it'll help.
Middle way.
Middle Way, yeah. Okay, so the highest one's called Middle Way, or Madhyamika, or Madhyamaka, I've heard it pronounced. I don't know which one is correct. Then beneath that is Mind Only. Beneath that is called Sutrist, as in sutra. And beneath that is Abhidharma. The sutrists, well, we need to go into it now, but they're, you're sort of going from the bottom up to the top. It's not that these were all wrong and this one's right. They each built on the school before it. These were great scholars and great thinkers who, you know, would teach and pass on what they knew, and then someone else would come in and give it a different angle, and they would add to their understanding, and then someone else came in and gave it a new angle and built on what everyone else had spoken. So this is the way we think of it: Abhidharma, Sutras, Mind Only, Middle Way. The bottom 2 are considered Hinayana or Theravada. The top 2 are considered Mahayana. The main difference, and this is for the people who don't know this, for our purposes, on the one hand has to do with motivation. Theravada is Mahayana. Theravada is primarily concerned with individual liberation, individual freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from suffering. Attaining nirvana for oneself, essentially. Whereas Mahayana has this bodhisattva ideal, this spiritual warrior ideal, which was, we'll talk about who propagated that idea, because it was very revolutionary, but based on the Buddha's teaching, which turned around that motivation and said that you cannot achieve awakening, full awakening. You cannot become a Buddha yourself unless you do it for the sake of all living beings. That compassion, that compassionate action is what essentially can put you over the top. I'm simplifying phenomenally, but that's one way of looking at the difference. For our purposes, the other differences are how they look at this question of emptiness, how they define the true nature of reality, all right? And that's really what we're primarily concerned with. So which one of these did the Buddha teach? Somebody speak up loud. The first one? The Abhidharma. Tiffany, what did you say?
All of them.
All of them? Anybody else? Okay, he taught all of them. These are all based on the Buddha's teachings. Right? Again, we're going back to this idea of skillful means, that he taught in the capacity of his audience. And he would nudge people along, and all the great scholars have done the same thing. They've nudged us along towards a higher and more sophisticated and more nuanced understanding. This is pretty difficult stuff. You have to take it one step at a time, okay? So he taught all 4 in order to sharpen our thinking. And also you could say there are 4 different, that in every one of us in this room, our minds contain each one of these. Our minds at certain times think of reality the way that the Abhidharmists did, the way the sutras did, the way mind only did. Those schools don't exist anymore. And the way, middle way. And the Buddha would say 25% of his audience were Abhidharmists, 25% were sutras, 25 mind only, 25 middle way. What I'm saying is that it also exists within our each individual mind. That there's a part of us that understands it this way, and finally this way. And we're trying to tap into that so you can move through this level of understanding. Okay. Also, if you really understand all of them, and the people who've been studying this have already learned the first 2, then you can help more people, because then you can speak their language. All right? You're not speaking in such rarefied terms. So we're learning to distinguish between the literal and the figurative in order to interpret what the Buddha said, and that's critical to learning the true meaning of emptiness. All right? Why is emptiness important to understand? Tsongkhapa, considered the greatest Tibetan scholar of all. He's the teacher of the first Dalai Lama. Anybody here know his dates?
56 to 1419.
Actually, you're close, very close. It's 1357. Somebody once told me here it's 1357.
Yeah, that's like.
You just go up 1357.
1419.
1419. Okay. But he's considered the greatest Tibetan scholar, and it's his book that we're actually going to be using and reading from. He quotes the Buddha, paraphrased, because they, people, don't understand it, they wander hopelessly in suffering, hurting themselves. The full quote is actually in your reading. That's going to be a homework question too. It's called the Sutra requested by Arya Rashtrapala. Arya is Sanskrit for a realized being, someone who has experienced emptiness directly. And we can talk more about that for those of you who don't know that term. It's commonly referred to around here as the DPE, the direct perception of emptiness. It's experiencing emptiness rather than just learning it intellectually. It's, as they say, it's a difference between learning about ice cream and tasting it. It's very different. Okay? It's like learning about being in love and being in love. That I'm sure we can all understand. Okay? And the Buddha said that there is a way to stop your suffering if you do understand this. And you can stop your aging and death. Now there's a radical statement. Anybody here actually think you can, no more Botox? You can stop the wrinkles and live forever? Is that a literal or a figurative statement? Figurative. If you ask Geshe Michael that, he'll tell you no, it's literal. All right? But not literal in the way you think. Not literal meaning no more Botox, no more wrinkles, no more cream. But if you understand what's really going on and who, quote unquote, you really are, you can overcome death and aging. Because what's actually aging and dying isn't you. Sounds heady and intellectual, but it actually isn't. I don't know how to keep emphasizing this enough. This stuff to me, and I'm sure to all of us, sounds so off the wall and so like, up there someplace. And then you get into an argument with somebody and you find yourself saying, wait a minute, what's really going on here? I know what's going on here. This isn't coming from out there, it's coming from in here. And you actually take a breath and you actually slow down and you stop getting mad at somebody and blaming them and you realize, wait a minute, this isn't so intellectual, is it? This actually is real. This is actually in my life. And if you take that logic to its logical conclusion, then who is dying? Who is aging? Who are you? Ah, didn't we start the class this way? Who are you? Who are you? We are labels. We are the things we call ourselves, including this. I am this body. When this body dies, I'm gone. Well, I am, Sophia is, Jason is, Tiffany is, Nolan is. But is that who I am? Am I Jason? Am I Nolan? Am I Sophia? Am I Tiffany? These are the questions we need to ask. This is not just some intellectual exercise. This changes your life. Okay. If you understand mind-only way, the mind-only way of getting emptiness, then Madhyamika, the middle way, specifically the higher middle way, because there's actually a lower and a higher, Madhyamika Prasangika, or the middle way consequence school, will be clear. It will be clear. This is a way of getting clearer on it. Okay? How many of you either were here or watched online or took it when I taught Course 6 and taught the whole Chijadrak thing? Okay, so it's that whole deep dive sort of thing. That's mind only. That's actually mind only. That way of understanding how the brain works, how we actually perceive things. That's actually comes from mind only. And it is valid. And the middle way, the higher schools agree with this. It's not like they disagree. It's in other ways they disagree, but this is a road to a higher understanding, okay, of this. And I'm going to make it as clear and as easy as I possibly can, because it's hard stuff, even for those of us who've been taking a lot of these courses. So this is really a beautiful bridge, mind only, all right? So you got to keep that hat on. Okay, so the Buddha used two ways. He used skillful means. We talked about skillful means, a way of sort of tricking you into thinking of things in a different way than you had before. He would teach something for years and then pull the rug out and say, well, actually I didn't mean that. I meant this other thing. Well, you know, now you had to start thinking all over again. All your assumptions pulled out from under you. And he also would present countless different logical ways of looking at this idea of emptiness, because no one way works for everybody. We all have our own way of understanding this. And it may not come from one of our teachers. It could come in a completely unexpected direction. From another teacher you hear somewhere else. It could come from your partner. It could come, something could happen tomorrow where you go, wait a minute. Is that what they were talking about? And you get some clarity. You get some moment of clarity that helps everything else fall into place. So there are many different ways to get there. They say that this experience of actually tasting reality, of perceiving emptiness directly, takes 20 minutes on the cushion. It can take eons to get there, assuming you believe in reincarnation. It could take eons. It certainly could take this entire lifetime to get to that 20 minutes. I mean, think about how long it's taken for you. Perhaps all of you have had some realization in your lives recently or in the last few years, something you never understood before. Maybe about your parents, maybe about yourself, maybe about your partner. How long did it take you to get there? And when you get there, you go, how could I not have seen that? This is so bloody obvious. Why didn't I, duh! It happens. You can't know what you know till you know it. And it can come in such unexpected ways, and then it just seems so obvious. Same thing.
Two questions. Have you experienced direct perception of emptiness, and how do you know that it came from one here has been it without meditating for hours and hours? How do you know?
Well, I think the first answer is easy, no. Though I have had some amazing experiences that absolutely, literally, quite literally, funny word, knocked me off my cushion. I mean, I remember falling backwards, being so shocked at you know, it was like the Wizard of Oz getting to peek behind the curtain. Somebody just lifted up a little piece, and I saw there was something back there. It wasn't even so much a question. It was meditating on something and a much larger realization came. How do you know? My only answer could possibly be, how could you not know at that point, I think. I mean, there is an actual description of it, and we could talk about that at some point. And actually, if you, I would suggest that you listen online to Geshe Michael's teaching, which is called The Deep Dive, if you haven't already. The Deep Dive, which he gave here a couple of years back, what, 3 years ago maybe? Which was, for those of us in the room, it was, I can't even put words to it. I think there was hardly a dry eye in the room. It was astonishing what it was. It was astonishing. But it was certainly the closest I ever heard to understanding what that experience was. Anyway, that's for another class. So how do you, when you're trying to figure out if the Buddha's being literal, why not simply use when he says, hey, I really mean it this time. I'm being literal. Right now I'm being literal. Why not use that? Anybody? Why not use when he says, which he has, this is the true answer. This is actually it. Why not simply say, okay, that's the one? Nolan.
I think maybe because that's not how you're supposed to interpret any of the information.
So he's forcing you to think and not take him literally. Thank you. Exactly right. All right. How do you know he's being literal when he says he's being literal?
Did he say that he was being literal?
Yeah.
The first time he taught, and then also the second time?
Yeah, well, I don't think he used the word literal. I mean, first of all, he was speaking in Pali, I think, but this idea of this is, I am now giving you the true answer. I'm now giving you the truth. He would certainly say that. So can you take that literally? Based on what we know, you can't, because he would then say something else.
You also
Well, I think you would say that it's literal so that as a student you can try it on. Really
Right.
do something to it.
Right.
As opposed to listen.
That was going to be my point. It's his realization. It's
Right.
not yours at that moment. You can take it on faith and then try it out.
But we also are understanding here that the Buddha knew that this wasn't the true answer. Like when he taught mind only, or when he taught Abhidharma, when he taught everything exists exactly the way you think, he knew that wasn't what he had awakened to. But he also knew that's what his audience was ready for. And he had to get them to that. He had to get them to the Four Noble Truths. He had to get them to the Eightfold Path. He had to get them to, you know, the three extraordinary teachings, etc. He had to get them to these basic ideas of living morally, ethically, of living, of learning to meditate, learning to concentrate, you know, and beginning to learn about the nature of what's actually going on before he could take them to a higher level. He had to get them into first grade. And there were some people in first grade who were already, you know, who were quick and were ready for 8th grade. But there were others who had to be moved up more slowly. So, you know, it wasn't like that was his truth at the moment and then he changed it. The whole idea here is that, as Nolan said, and as Brian said, you know, it was a way for him to get you to think. Try it on. But don't just listen to the words slavishly and just say, well, now I know. He's forcing you to think, which is why he would then contradict himself. But you have to understand, how, you know, okay, which one is he, where is he taking me? You have to work it yourself, okay? So, you got to run? You keep looking at the clock.
I didn't know if you were going to offer a break.
We don't have time for a break.
Oh, it's not bad.
Yeah, run to the bathroom. Anybody have to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Yeah, I'm sorry. But normally I would try and take a 10 to 15 minute break, but anybody want to stand up and stretch for 30 seconds? Go ahead. Yeah. I mean, even while I keep talking, feel free to stand up and get comfortable, you know. Okay? So what we use to understand this is a method called the art of interpretation. The art of interpretation, all right? The Buddha himself said, you need to do this. So it's not like it's insulting to say, well, you need to interpret the Buddha's words. Why can't, this is the Buddha. You know, it's like saying, well, Jesus, how do we know if you're a Christian, you know, maybe Jesus didn't actually mean that. Or maybe he meant something else. I mean, would you question Jesus' words? Would you question Muhammad's words? Would you question the Buddha's words? Well, the Buddha told you to. He said that. He said that you have to treat his words like gold. There's this thing on my refrigerator that my wife put up there, which I thought I'd quote to you. First time I saw it, until I saw who read it, it sort of shocked me, and then I saw who wrote it, rather. It says, believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who has said it, not even if I have said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. That was said by the Buddha. So he is encouraging us to do it. So what did he recommend to people of how you test this? And he said you test it like gold. How do you test gold? How did you test gold 2,500 years ago? You didn't have chemical analysis. Beg your pardon? You weigh it. Well, there's three ways. There's three ways that we talk about. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm trying to move us along here. That we test gold. You burn it, you cut it, and you rub it against a touchstone. This is historically the way they would test to see if something was real. You would melt it and see if it's gold. You would cut it to see if it was actually lead covered with gold. So you would cut through it to see if it's solid gold. And you would rub it against a touchstone. Don't ask me what that is, I'm not completely sure. But it essentially means don't trust anything until you've tested it out. So what is it, you can't exactly cut words or rub words or melt words. So what does that mean? Well, you could think of it this way. Burning words, check it against your own direct experience. Does it make sense to you? If somebody says you can stick your hand on hold a cube of ice and it doesn't even, you won't even feel it, try it. Try holding a cube of ice for like 2 minutes. You will not get to 2 minutes, trust me. You won't get there. Not something right out of the freezer. You'd be lucky to get to 10 seconds. It burns. It's so cold. So does it violate your direct experience? Does it make sense against your own direct experience? Cutting it. Check it against what you understand logically. Does it make sense to you? Is this a pen? Do you see a pen here? To you, is it a pen or isn't it? If I said this isn't a pen, well, what does that mean? Of course it's a pen. I can write with it. I can take it from you and I can write with it. It's a pen. It is a pen. I'm not saying the pen doesn't exist. It's a pen. I'll get back to this in a second, okay? So the first is, does it contradict my own direct experience? When we say burn, does it contradict my experience? The second is, does it contradict my own sense of logic? The third, the litmus test, the touchstone, check it against something you've heard from someone you trust. Historically, in this case, it would be, well, the Buddha said it. Does that mean, oh, the Buddha said it, I don't even have to think about anything else? Well, no, he just told you not to do that. But it's one of the things you can look at. If you have a teacher or your mother or your father who you have known to be someone who's not going to lie to you, who has always been honest with you, or whose wisdom you trust, you give their words some weight. Maybe you give it a lot of weight if you don't understand something yet, but Professor so-and-so or Mama or Pop says, you know, try it this way. You go on faith, you trust it, because you need to have the experience. So you take a chance, because you trust this person's word. So sometimes that's a way to test it. Does it also make sense to you? If your father said, hold the ice cube in your hand for 2 minutes and don't put it down, does that make sense to you, especially if you've ever held an ice cube? Then you might think, I think my father's a little nuts. So it's not like you can take one thing. If you've got 2 out of 3, you probably can move forward, at least, and take a shot. If you can test it against all 3, then, you know, it probably is worth giving it a try. Okay? Is there a pen here? When I said, do you understand it logically? Yes, there is a pen here. You can also, if it doesn't meet any of these, you might want to, instead of simply saying, I'm out of here, say, well, let me look a little bit deeper. It's like this story about the Lama who says to his students, I need you to go out to the bank and rob it and bring me back the money. I need the money. And 9 out of his 10 students run off to rob the bank. And the other one sits there and he says to them, why are you sitting here? I told you to go rob the bank. And he said, I've got a feeling you're trying to teach me something else. And he was obviously the one who was correct. All right? So you need to look deeper. You need to constantly think for yourself. Is there something going on here that I need to understand? Is somebody throwing something at me so I can look deeper? Constantly, this tradition and this teacher with a capital T, the Buddha, was forcing us to think for ourselves. Okay. So let's just review real quickly. In the 3 turnings of the wheel, what did the Buddha say in the first turning? Real quick, shorthand.
Everything exists.
Everything exists, what?
The way we think it does.
The way we think it does, basically the way it seems, right? By appearance. In the second turning, he said, what? Nothing exists the way we think it does. So then we got to the third, which is triggered by this bodhisattva saying, what did you mean? Okay? The turning of the wheel. What does the turning of the wheel mean? Well, I've already told you what it means historically. What you should also know is turning of the wheel also refers to the student. When you grasp something, when you go, something clicks, that's a turning of the wheel. That's a turning of your wheel. So it doesn't just refer to the teacher. It can mean realizations in your own mind. All right? So how do you know which one of these is right? Well, you could say it's the one that's right for you in that moment. The one that you understand in that moment is the right one. And if you run with that and you keep thinking, it will take you to the next one and the next one. Each answer will take you to the next question. There is no final answer here until you let it all go. So it also means that when you hear somebody teaching, well, everything exists exactly the way you think it does, you can't just sit there and go, obviously a dummy. Everybody knows nothing exists the way we, How do you know that teacher or that person isn't a Buddha or isn't a Lama trying to teach that audience, that student, that group, in a way to bring them to the next level? So now, of course, the exception to this is if somebody's teaching something harmful, something that could harm you, could harm them, the students could harm themselves, then you have to step up and say something. And even if you disagree with what the teacher's saying, you need to step up and debate and question. That's your job, is to question and not just to accept everything. But not to judge necessarily what's going on, because you don't know what's going on. There are teachers everywhere. There are opportunities everywhere, including from people who seem to be saying something we disagree with. Everything is an opportunity to look deeper. So you can't, the first, anybody who here has taken Bodhisattva vows? What's the first Bodhisattva vow? I don't know your name. Stella, sorry. I have to hear names twice. Stella, what's the first Bodhisattva vow? It's okay if you don't remember. It's like, probably was a while ago and there's a lot of them, right?
First Bodhisattva is not criticizing others.
Praising yourself and criticizing others, right? But it's specific. Not praising yourself and criticizing others out of poor motivation because you're judging them or because you're trying to make yourself bigger and make them smaller. Specifically, even more specifically, not criticizing other schools, other traditions, not just Buddhist traditions, even outside. Not criticizing Christian tradition, Jewish tradition, Muslim tradition, because it doesn't belong to you. So we have to keep that vow, okay? Okay. So we're almost at the end. Okay, so the book that we're studying, for those of you writing this stuff down, it is called The Essence, Peter, could you write this down? The Essence of Eloquence on the Art of Interpretation. The Essence of Eloquence on the Art of Interpretation. So, who wrote this book? Jason Kappa wrote this book. Okay? Jason Kappa, J means Lord. Tsongkhapa refers to where he was born, where he was from in Tibet. So Lord Tsongkhapa is sort of a translation of that. It doesn't mean he was a nobleman, it's just an honorific. They say that Jason Kappa wrote 10,000 pages in his lifetime. Some say he took dictation from Manjushri, also known as gentle voice. And some say he was Manjushri. But this book is supposed to be the distillation, the heart, the essence of everything that he wrote. Right? The essence of eloquence on the art of interpretation. And he was actually commenting on the Sutra of the True Intent, which I mentioned earlier, which is what the Buddha wrote about his own intention and which is the source of understanding of the mind-only school. All right? So, Peter, would you erase the top part and just write this down as well? This is also homework for you. The two sutras that were taught by who? The Buddha. All right. The two sutras that were taught, one of them is called Sutra on the True Intent. Actually, the bigger name is called Commentary on the True Intent of the Sutras, because it was the Buddha commenting on his own teaching. So, well, you can do it. The Sutra on the True Intent will do. And this is the root text of the Mind-Only School. And this is the book where the 7th chapter of this book is called the chapter requested by the Bodhisattva. His name, his Indian name is Paramartha Samudgata. You don't have to know that, but that's his name. The chapter requested by the Bodhisattva is the 7th chapter of this book. And so Jason Kappa's book is a commentary on that text. The other sutra is called the Sutra requested by the Arya named Never-Ending Wisdom. The sutra requested by the Arya named Never-Ending Wisdom. Bless you. This is the source for the Middle Way's understanding of what the Buddha, when the Buddha was being figurative and when he was being literal. So the first one is the Mind-Only School. The second one is the Middle Way School. Okay. So finally, let's just talk about this name, mind only. So they don't believe everything is one big brain. They don't believe everything is an illusion. Nothing exists at all. In fact, far from that. We are going to learn, I can't put it into one sentence. This whole course is going to be learning their understanding of it. But I can tell you this much, and this came from, I think I mentioned her, Kimberly Teresa, who taught here a few weeks ago. Quite a beautiful course. And by the way, one of the interesting things she did is we talked about the three turnings of the wheel, referring to three teachings of the Buddha. She sort of took things out to this, what I'd call a more macro level. It's like she zoomed out to a much wider thing, and she defined the first turning of the wheel as the Buddha, this historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, and his teachings. The second turning of the wheel as Nagarjuna, who is considered, sometimes called the second Buddha. He lived in around 250 AD, and he sort of turned everything on its ear. It was his teachings and his writings that created the Mahayana school, and was a real revolutionary idea within Buddhism. And then the third turning of the wheel, she actually calls, his name is Master Asanga. You're going to hear his name many times, Asanga. He taught the mind-only school. And it seems like she was putting it in a different order, but she was approaching things from a different angle of this understanding of emptiness. And then she talked about the fourth turning of the wheel, which was the beginning of Tantra, as we know it, the higher teachings, which was about 800 AD. But it was just an interesting other way of looking at this idea of the turnings of the wheel. That's just anecdotal. But she talked about this mind only, and which was posited by Master Asanga. And he posited this idea that the world is arising from your mind. The world is arising from your mind. And in effect, he, by doing so, unified these two truths, deceptive truth and ultimate truth, deceptive reality and ultimate reality, in your mind. It was Nagarjuna before him who wrote about what we call non-dualism. That, for example, in samsara, in the suffering world, in this world that we live in, things have opposites. Black has white, pleasure has pain, right? Samsara and nirvana, two opposites. But in the non-dualistic understanding, they are not opposites. They are, in fact, two things, but they are the same thing. They are two aspects, you could say, of the same thing. That there is no ontological difference, no metaphysical difference between samsara and nirvana. It is a state of mind. It's not like you travel from here to heaven. You don't go anywhere. That's the idea that the path leads nowhere but right here. It is a state of mind. It is a shift in your perspective or in your karma, depending on how you choose to look at this and the terms that you choose to use. This has a direct effect on your practice. And here we go right back into what are you doing when you leave this room. It has a direct effect on your practice, on how you meditate. When there's a way of meditating where you're sort of, let's say you're resting in a non-conceptual state, this idea of just being right here, right now, and trying to let Jason fall away and just be bare, just maintain bare awareness, just being totally and utterly present in this moment. What Mind Only did was they actually, in a way, you could say, said ultimate reality is the mind, because mind creates everything. Everything springs from mind. more specifically, when I'm looking at Karen, right? Angela. Boy, am I? Yeah, close. I had 2 syllables. You have 3. Okay, Angela. When I'm looking at Angela, Angela and my seeing Angela arise from the same karmic seed simultaneously. That what I'm seeing and my ability to see it arise simultaneously from the same place. Now, there's a lot of differences. I know that sounds a little airy-fairy, but it'll make more sense as we get into it. But this was a key step towards understanding how the mind is actually perceiving things, and whether the mind is actually ever seeing something, or whether it's seeing a memory of something. And by the way, it's not like all this disagrees with science. The scientific understanding of how the mind perceives is really the same. So I'll drag a scientist in here to prove my point. But the implications of this are really, when you think about it, amazing, because it's going back to this idea of the union of the two, the sacred and the profane, the ordinary and the extraordinary, the ultimate truth and relative truth. If they are indeed not separate, if they are coming from the same place, if they are coming from mind, then all things are possible. What was it Geshe Michael said? If Jedrak is chi, then anything is possible. If quality is character, if characteristic is quality, then anything is possible. It's if the sacred and profane are the same thing, then the sandwich I have for lunch tomorrow is divine. Going to the bathroom is divine. I know this sounds bizarre, but think about it. The implication is that every breath I take is an ornament, to use Kimberly's words, an ornament of the divine. Can you live your life that way? This, folks, is Tantra. This is what it is. Everything is a miracle. Everything. Everything is God. God is everywhere. God is in me. God is in you. God is in everything. That old story of the 2 monks, and one of them is traveling, and he comes to the monastery, and he needs to urinate, and he urinates on the statue of the Buddha. And the other monk flips out. What are you doing? And, pee on the rock. Well, isn't the Buddha in the rock as well as in the statue? Isn't he in the earth? God is in everything. You can use a phrase, a Western phrase, an Eastern phrase, think of it any way you please. This is just, I'm actually almost on time. This is taking us back to where I tried to start here, this whole idea of who are you? In the listening to what, and discovering what is actually across from you, who is actually across from you, and then hearing your own words, hearing your own labels about yourself. That those labels aren't who you are. Maybe you are something much greater than that. Maybe you, as you think of you, doesn't even exist except as a concept, except as a label. And this is a segue to the next class, which of course I'm not going to give you now. 13. Okay. I got my pages out of order. I'm actually on my last page. So that is really what I wanted to say. Okay? That, and I want to say it again because I think it's so important. Your food, your lover, I wrote this today, your worst enemy, the most boring details of your day, everything. Your life is your practice. The implications of everything we're going to learn is heading us in that direction. Okay? So, we don't have a class next week, it's Memorial Day. So we'll pick up the week after, the Monday after. And again, to repeat, I'm going to make this, I may as well do this announcement thing while I'm here, that on Thursday night, starting on the 29th, There are meditation classes. They actually, the evening goes from 7 to 9:30. From 7 to 8, you'll be learning shamatha meditation, just following your breath, being totally present. And that's being taught by Dimitri, I think. And the second is called The Breath of Compassion. First is called Your Mind, a User's Guide. Second is called A Breath of Compassion, taught by Caitlin Conlon. And that's a Lojong practice. Very different. So Thursday nights. Peter, you look like you have something you want to say. Yeah, what's that?
Hi guys. I just want to tell you quickly, there's a URL you might want to write down. It's called the summerretreat.org. It's an annual retreat that's held in Massachusetts by two fine teachers that used to be here in the East Coast.
And who are two founders of the center.
Yes, founders, and also the spiritual director and originator of these schools, Rosenfield himself and Cindy Lee, his wife, will be there teaching. They are the main teachers. There's no main teacher, but he's the star class teacher, let's put it in colloquial terms. This is a tremendous retreat. It's 7 days in Bucolic, New Hampshire. And I'm sponsoring I've organized a raffle. The tuition is about $668, I think. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact figure. You can purchase a ticket, $20, and that gives you a chance to attend the retreat for $20. What we did, this is the second time we've organized this, is if you would come and see me, I'll give you 4 tickets. There's no cash involved at this time. I just give you 4 tickets. You either buy them and return the money to me, or you try to sell them to people you know who might be interested in this. So if you want to do this, just come see me after class. I'll sign you up. I'll give you 4 tickets. Even if you come back in another month and a half, the drawing's on July 1st. Even if you come back another month and a half and you haven't sold one, just return me the tickets. So there's that, and if you look at the summerretreat.org online, you'll see what's being offered. Much more eloquently than I can tell you in a short half minute. But we've all studied under Lama Mood, and he's a powerhouse. It's August 12th through the 18th. And secondly, while we're talking about what things cost, as Jason said, things cost money here. The last teaching that we did here with the Lama Lord, I produced the class, and I was always haranguing you for money at the end of the class. So here I am haranguing you again. Things cost money. We are actually, I've been told, pretty tight right now, and we may be obliged at a certain point, not now, where we would have to actually charge admission. So please try to keep things as they are currently. Please drop something in the bowl, and remember that if you think that you can't afford it, then you're just basically telling the university that you're broke. So you can always afford something, and I encourage you to put in what you can afford, what you can, and maybe even a little bit more than this if you can. Personally, there have been times when I haven't put anything in the bowl myself. There have been times when I put my last $20 in the bowl. So it does work, and I won't go into that, but it does work. You need to just sort of put the sign out there that you have enough money that you can spare, $4 or $5 or $10. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Speaking of Lama Root, he's coming to LA. He comes here once a year. Do we have the dates back there, Lori?
Yes.
He's going to be teaching for, early June.
He's coming June 6th, that's the Friday, for the book launch party.
Right. He's got a new book. You can see, I think we have a copy of his Renegade's Guide to a Spiritual Life. That's the first book. He's launching a new book called Be Nobody. So we're going to celebrate that at a party here, Friday night the 6th. No teaching, just a party. And he'll be signing books. So if you want to meet him, That's a great time to do it.
June
And
6th.
June 6th, right here. And then he's teaching workshops over 3 days, 4 days.
Saturday,
Okay.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So come to one, come to two, come to all, whatever you can. But as Peter said, if you've never heard him teach, he's quite a powerhouse teacher. Please leave a donation in the bowl if you can. And there was something else I was going to say.
Also, if everyone could please sign in on the sign-in sheet that's outside the door. We were gonna sign in electronically, but we don't have passwords.
Right, yeah, okay. We'll get that straightened out on the yeah, we have a tablet, but next time we'll have that straightened out.
The way on the basic, I think Jeff about the top of the registration. Registration is mandatory. We do need to know who's coming to our class. So this week it'll be just basically by hand sign up. And next week we'll have that happen. Just make it a habit when you're coming to class, just sign up.
Yeah, in 2 weeks, not next week. It's Memorial Day next week. The last thing I wanted to say is if you're new to the center, there are people here, please raise your hands, who have been here for a while, Lori and, right, okay. If you're new here, feel absolutely free to talk to them or me. Mark also has been here a very long time. If you have any questions at all, we also have a board of directors. I'm the president of the board of directors, so I'm a good person to get some information from. So anything you want to know, we will be more than happy to respond to your questions or ideas or anything you may want to contribute. I can see you now. I think I've gotten used to the glow. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we want to do closing prayers. The idea here is to take what we have accomplished tonight, whatever we've learned, and give it away. You're allowed to give it away to yourself. I don't mean to say that we are not. I mean, it's a funny thing to say aloud. Obviously, you can do what you please. If you give it to yourself, give it to yourself so you can increase your understanding, so that you can increase your happiness, so that you can then make others happy. So, or if there's someone that you have in mind that perhaps is suffering, then give it to them. Okay. Tiffany.
Here's the greater.
Filled with a den of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers, the great mountain, the 4 continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer them all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami.
By the goodness of
What I have just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the 2 ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. Thank you very much. And thank you for sticking with this. This is